What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today I want to talk to you about how Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs is being used to deceive us, is being used to manipulate us, and is being used to influence us, especially today. Now, this is not anything new. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which if you don't know what that is, this is a head slap for those of you who are just listening and not watching. If you don't know what that is, that just goes to show how the school system is really screwed up, because this is one of the most important concepts to understand as a human being, no matter who you are, no matter what you're trying to accomplish, no matter what industry you're in, no matter. This is one of the most important things to understand so that you can influence others and so that you don't get influenced or manipulated, depending on the word you want to use, influenced by others in a way that you don't want to be. Now, everyone uses this idea to influence others, influence, manipulate, whatever you want to call it. They're the same thing. They're just two sides of the same coin. But everyone uses this idea. This is used in marketing for every company around the world. This is used whenever you talk to somebody and you're trying to convince them of a different way of thinking about things. This is used in everything. The thing is, it's not the overarching thing that we're thinking about whenever we're talking about ideas. When we're talking about ideas, we're just talking about ideas. We're talking about how I think my idea is right and you think your idea is right. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the foundation of all of that. It's what sits underneath of everything that guides and makes our decisions, and guides and makes and builds the beliefs that we have in our life. So that's why this is important to understand. Not necessarily so that you can say, hey, this need is important and you should believe in, or you should want to have this need instead of that need. That's not what this is about. But if you understand that every belief that you have is meant to fulfill one of these needs, every idea that you have, every idea that someone else has that they're trying to sell you, every product that somebody's trying to sell you, and in the environment that we're currently in the United States at least, every candidate is trying to sell you something, and what they're trying to do is either fulfill or agitate one of these needs to make you feel like it's in danger. So that's why this idea is so important, because like I said, especially in the environment we are in today in the United States, that's what like all the conversation is about. It is agitating the needs that we have as human beings. We have lower level needs and we have higher level needs, and then we have everywhere in between. And if you really want to get to the base of somebody, or you really want to get to the point of agitating a wide group or a big group, the lower down in those needs that you go, the better off you're going to be. The more you can agitate the lower needs, the more you're going to more likely gain confidence on your side or gain support on your side. And what I mean by agitate is either say that the ideas that you're going to put in place are going to fix and support these lower needs, or that the other party or the other group is going to hinder or hurt or tear away these other needs from you. So before we actually get into that, let's talk about the hierarchy of needs so you can understand what I'm talking about. Maslow's hierarchy, Abraham Maslow is the guy's name, a psychologist from the early, I think he was born in like 1905 and he died in 1970-ish, give or take. He developed these over the course of his career. Most people will say that Maslow's hierarchy of needs it has 5 needs. Most people would give you a list of 5 needs in the hierarchy, but he actually expanded them in the 60s and 70s, and there are 8 total hierarchy of needs that Maslow has developed. So at the base, you can think of this as a pyramid, if you will. At the base of the needs are biological and physiological needs. These are literally the basic things that we need in our life. This is like air and food and water, shelter, like just very basic things that in the United States and westernized societies and in a large part of the world, especially a large part of the world, westernized societies that are arguing about dumb shit, that anyway, I don't want to start going down that rabbit hole yet. I'll go down that rabbit hole in a second. But these are the needs that we rarely think about, like because they have been covered and that we don't really have to think about them. They're there and they have been there for a long time, especially in westernized societies. Like we don't have to think about them. The next set of needs are safety needs. These are protection from the elements. This is law and order. This is, let me see what else. I got my notes up on the screen, so if you see me glancing back and forth. This is stability in your life and freedom from fear. Like you don't want to have to live in fear always, all the time. You don't want to have to be concerned of if somebody's going to come and break into your house for the fun of it because they just feel like doing it and they know that they're not going to be reprimanded in any way. So that's the next level up. Then we have love and belonging. Love and belonging is pretty self-explanatory. That's friendships, intimacy, trust, acceptance, receiving and giving affection and love, so on and so forth. After that, we have esteem needs. That's esteem for ourselves and having other people have esteem for us. Us liking ourselves, us, loving ourselves, all the other words that, self-love, anything else you want to say, the popular things that people are saying today. And then also other people having esteem for us in those same ways, feeling valued by other people, being accepted by other people, and so on. The next two needs were added later on after Maslow created his original five needs. So we have cognitive needs and aesthetic needs. We won't talk about those much today. Cognitive needs are just the wants to have knowledge and understanding. Aesthetic needs are the appreciation of beauty and form and all that good stuff. After that, we have self-actualization, which is one of Maslow's original needs. Self-actualization is realizing personal potential, self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth, and having peak experiences. And then at the top of the pyramid is self-transcendence, which is being motivated by the values that transcend beyond yourself. So like you're motivated by helping other people and the joy that you have by and through helping other people because all of your other needs have been met, because every need from the bottom all the way up through self-actualization, all of those have been met for you. So now you can focus on the top pyramid or the top of the pyramid. Okay, so that was a lot to go through. If you want to, you can pull up your Google machine or whatever search engine that you use, type in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, find one that has the eight needs in it. Most of them, 90% of them will just have 5. Some of them will have 6, some of them will have 7, but there are very few that actually have 8. So if you want to actually see this and view this on your own, you can go find that and you can be able to understand this better. Okay, so going back to why this matters and why understanding basic needs is important. Because when you understand basic needs, you can understand why someone would say something to change the way that you think or to manipulate the way that you think. And you can use the word manipulation as a positive or a negative. It doesn't matter. It is all manipulation. Anytime someone is trying to influence or change the way you think, they're trying to manipulate it in some way. So what they're trying to do, or what somebody is trying to do, is tell you a thing that basically balks at a need, balks at one of these needs, and is trying to tear away or either tell you how they're going to support one of these needs or how someone else may not support one of these needs. So if you look at the two candidates in the United States today, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, both of them, when they're talking about the other side, they're both saying the same kind of things about how the other side is going to tear away needs. If you think about words from, say, Donald Trump talks a lot about the border. So the border being open does what? It lets a lot of people in that are potential criminals. And what does that do? That increases the likelihood of reduced law and order. One of the lower needs that we have that historically, at least in recent history in the United States, hasn't been a gigantic concern. Like, crime will always be there. Crime will always be a thing. But crime has been relatively low in the United States for a long period of time. The media would like you to believe differently, but anyway, that has been the case historically. So the second from the bottom need, whenever Donald Trump is talking about illegal immigrants coming in and them being criminals and them likely, running amok and hurting people and stealing things and so on and so forth, which is happening, of course, that's what he's talking to. That is the need that he's talking to. On the other part, if you listen to Kamala Harris, one of the things that she likes to say is that Donald Trump is Hitler. And it's another recent thing that has come out. And when you say something like Donald Trump is Hitler, what need you're really alluding to is really a number of them. You're basically alluding to almost all of them. So you're basically trying to say that this person is going to tear away your livelihood and is going to tear away everything that you currently have and is going to create, go kill a bunch of people and so on and so forth. So it's like your basic need to survive. This person is going to tear that away. So she's even going lower down on the pyramid of needs to say that, like, your ability to survive is low. Like, if this guy is elected, because this guy is Hitler. He is Hitler reborn. And then there's many other examples of propaganda and so on and so forth on both sides where they're talking about how needs will be torn away if the other person is elected. Okay. And then you have what they will do about it. So here's where things get interesting. When you look at what they will do about it as a whole, I'm not going to go through and talk about specific ideas or specific programs that each one of them wants to implement. But if you look at as a whole, what they will do and what they will implement, the system that they will implement or support on average, I'm talking about the net. I'm not talking about every piece and part, because both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, to some extent, will implement some strategy or some program that supports capitalism. Both of them will implement some program that supports socialism. Both of them will. That's the way. I don't want to say that this is something we should just accept as a society, but like, if you look at the history of government in the United States, especially, that's the way that it's been. Whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, you implement things for both sides. The question is, what's the net? What is the net outcome of the programs and the things that you're going to implement? And when you look at that, the basic phrase that would encompass Kamala Harris's programs is equality of outcome. The basic phrase that would encompass Donald Trump's programs is equality of opportunity. Equality of outcome on one side, equality of opportunity on the other side. Okay? So basically, Kamala Harris is, and she said this specifically, like, she has said these, I'm not exactly how I'm going to say them, but she has said this. Everyone starts in a different place, so we need to be able to end in the same place. In other words, we need to all have the same outcome. Whereas Donald Trump is an entrepreneur through and through. That's been his career. That's been who he was. When you look at his last presidency, many of the things he implemented was in support of capitalism and entrepreneurship. Not all of them, but many of them. So on one side, equal opportunity. On the other side, equal outcome. So how did those play out when it comes to Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If a human being has a potential to reach the point where they have fulfilled all of these needs up until the top of the pyramid, where you can then transcend yourself and go and help others because you have already become the person that you believe that you're capable of. It's not to say that you want to stop growing, but you have fulfilled your potential. Like, you're making good money. You have a great family. You have good friends. You have good support system around you. You have all of these things around you. And now you can go just help other people. And that's what you want. So if that's the top of the pyramid and human beings have the potential need to have that in their life, when you look at these two ideas, outcome versus opportunity, how can those things, at what level do they stop? Meaning, are you able to potentially fulfill all of those needs with both of those ideas? So let's look. Let's just break it down in your head. So if we live in a society of equal opportunity and there's nothing necessarily blocking your way, then you have the opportunity as an individual to start somewhere and to go where you want. You have the opportunity to, everyone's going to have roadblocks. Everyone's going to have things. There's going to be discrimination along the way, whether you're white, black, yellow, purple, pink, or whatever. There's going to be all of that. And yet, you can work through it and you can make your way and you can problem solve and you can figure out and you can go find another person to talk to and you can work around it and you can get yourself to a point where you have fulfilled Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have topped it out if there is equal opportunity. So with that general premise in mind, we can go to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Cool. If we look at equal outcome, we don't know the answer. Why don't we know the answer? Because the question is, which is the next step that people don't think about. The question is, who defines the outcome? Who defines what the outcome that everyone is going to reach is? Do you see what I'm saying? So you can look at people on welfare and get a general idea of what I mean by this. People on welfare, who do you think defines how much money they get? The person? You think the person's like, hey, I want $5,000 a month. I want $10,000 a month. And that's what I want. And that's my need. And that's what I think is fair. You think that's what happens? I would argue, and not argue, you can go ask, that is not the way that it works. The way that it works is the government decides what is, quote, fair. They decide on the outcome, and then they disperse that to everybody. Now, you go to a welfare-ridden city or area of a city, and you decide if that fulfills your needs. Now, some of you may be like, well, Jerry, that's not fair to say that because, if everybody, you're talking about a small portion of society that's on welfare, which is true, on at least the kind of welfare that most people think about. I would argue that almost everybody in society is on welfare at some form or another, like Social Security is just another form of welfare. But nonetheless, sure, that's true. Well, if everybody, like if we're striving for everybody to have similar outcomes, then sure, it's going to be higher than that, right? Well, I don't know. Who decides? Who decides on what that outcome is going to be? Who decides on where the needs are met? Historically, I'll give you an answer. Historically, because the best way to know or understand where equal outcome leads to, look at history. Look at what happens. You can look most recently at, I think, Venezuela. I forget. I want to say it's Venezuela. I could be wrong. That's the most recent socialism experiment that has failed or is in the process of failing. You could look as far back as Diogenes in Roman history a couple thousand years ago, and everywhere in between. China has run the socialism experiment. Every country has. And historically, who decides? And what's the level of outcome? Like, what's the level of needs that are fulfilled? Well, you get basic needs fulfilled, and you get some level of safety needs fulfilled, and that's about it. And that's what you get. And that is equal outcome. So the question is, do you want your needs to be fulfilled by somebody else then? Do you want your needs to be fulfilled by somebody else? Because if you buy into the idea, or maybe the propaganda behind equal outcome, if you buy into that, someone else is deciding for you. You're not deciding, to be sure. On the other side, if you buy into equal opportunity, you get to decide how far you go. Like I said, yes, discrimination will be there. Yes, you'll have to overcome obstacles. Yes, there are going to be people who knock you off your road. Yes, there are other issues you're going to run into. All of that is true. All of those are facts. All of that is real. But it doesn't matter what color or what gender you are. It's going to happen to everybody. So if there's equal opportunity, you get to decide. But it's going to take effort. You have to work for it. You have to actually overcome obstacles. You have to actually work around people. You have to actually make decisions and move forward and do things that are scary and that are not comfortable. And that's why the idea of equal outcome is so appealing to people, because you don't have to try. You don't have to try. So cool, that's appealing. That's basically what we've been sold over the last 100 years, is you don't have to try. Appealing, great, until it gets to the point where they decide everything that you're going to do. And they decide the needs that are going to get fulfilled, which are basic needs. You won't have your Louis Vuitton bags. You won't have your fancy cars. You won't have all the other things, because no one needs those. No one needs those. You will have basic. So as you're making decisions on anything in life, and now granted, I'm using the United States upcoming election as an example, and that's the basic premise and underlying, idea behind this episode. But this goes with anything in life, anything that you're buying, any ideas that people are trying to convince you of, anything. A couple of ways to think through things. Number one is, don't just listen to the words that people say. One problem that we have is that we take people at their word. And if it is a person that you individually know and trust and have built rapport with, and you have an understanding of how, what level of knowledge they have in a given topic, and how much you can trust their background and the outcomes that they've had in life, and they're telling you things, then you can better off take them at their word. But if it's something you're making your own decision on that's going to impact your life also, then I would argue that you shouldn't take anybody necessarily strictly at their word, that then you should take the next step. Okay? So don't just take people at their word. Again, if you look at the propaganda on both sides, when it comes to the presidential race, if you take everybody at their word, then on one end, Donald Trump is Hitler, and on the other end, Kamala Harris is I forget what he always calls her, but Kamala Harris is going to open up the border and let the whole world in the United States. So if you just take people at their word, then you end up making very rational decisions. So then you have to take the next step. Okay. Number one is look at the history of the things that they've done and the outcomes that they've had. When it comes to someone making an accusation about somebody else, look at that other person and say, okay, does history tell us that this person has done this? If I look at Donald Trump, has history shown us that he's going to be Hitler? Well, no. Well, does that mean that he can't be Hitler? Well, there's always a chance. But what's the probability? Like, is it high? Is it 50%? Like, what's the probability? And depending on who you're talking to, they may tell you 100%, and then there'll be people who will tell you 0%. I wouldn't say that it's 0%, but it's not much higher than 0%. It may be 0.0001%. I don't know. I'm not him. I could tell you I would rather have a tyrannical Donald Trump than a system that's in place trying to tell me what to do, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. Somewhat kidding. But when you look at accusations, you have to ask, is that accusation about that person? Does their history tell me that that accusation is true or otherwise? Okay? And then whenever someone says they're going to do something, whenever someone says they're going to fulfill a need or implement a program, look into the future and ask, how does this actually play out? So a perfect example of this is corporate taxes. And Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have been arguing over corporate taxes. Kamala Harris makes corporations out to be these big bullies and stealing people's money and so on and so forth. The democratic system has essentially made corporations out to be big bullies and so on and so forth, which is totally ironic because they're all getting paid by all of these companies that they're putting down. But nonetheless, Kamala Harris wants to raise corporate taxes. Donald Trump wants to lower corporate taxes. Kamala Harris says Donald Trump's lowering of corporate taxes is helping the rich guy, and we can't help the rich guy, and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But let's play out those two scenarios. So what happens if Kamala Harris raises taxes for corporate America? What happens? Where does that go? How do they make up the difference? Now that they have to pay more to the government, where do they pay it forward? How do they make up that difference? They have to raise their prices, not because they're greedy, not because they're greedy. Do you understand? Not because they're greedy, but because they have to stay in business. In order to maintain a business, you have to have a certain number of cash coming in relative to your expenses. If your expenses are suddenly going up, guess what? You have to raise prices. Okay, what happens if Donald Trump lowers taxes for corporations? Play it forward. The opposite would happen. Suddenly expenses are going down, so companies can go, oh, cool. Well, we might be able to lower our prices because our expenses are suddenly going down. The problem is most people just look at the immediate. Well, we're going to charge these guys more because they're the bad guys. Okay. Who's going to pay for that? Guess what? You are. So look into history and ask yourself, what's the outcome of this? Like, if I play this forward, how does this play out? If Kamala Harris starts giving people $25,000 to buy their first house, who's paying for that $25,000? You are. So you got to take the next step forward. The idea of someone giving me $25,000, cool. That's great. Like, that's a great idea. But if it comes with a pretty hefty price tag, not as cool. Not as cool. Okay? So that's why understanding Maslow's hierarchy of needs is important because it is running in the background all the time. It is always running in the background. It is always influencing the decisions that you make, the decisions other people make, the influence that people trying to have on one another. It's always running in the background. It's always back there. So it's a fun game to play, like, oh, I wonder what need they're trying to fulfill here, or if am I going to be able to fulfill all the needs that I want in my life whenever this decision is made or this program is implemented. So that's why this idea is important. And then you can actually start to make different decisions. You can ask different questions. You can extrapolate things out to see if it's going to play to an advantage or not. And that is where we are starting to miss a step, is we're not playing things out. We're not thinking through the process. We're just taking people at words and not looking at history to tell us if the words are true, or looking into the future and seeing if it plays out and it makes sense. But that's what we need to do. Like, if we want to start making better decisions, critical thinking is going to be a big player in that. Cool? Make sure you share this with anybody who is struggling to make their own decisions or feels like they're being manipulated by the world around them. That's everybody. And understanding and thinking for yourself is so important. So share this with anybody who, is very easily influenced by others, so they can start to think differently as well. And until next time, get out there. Here's to your 1% growth every day.